Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I am your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm glad to have with me for the first time James Anderson. He is the Director and Chief Executive Officer of NuLegacy Gold. NuLegacy Gold trades in Canada under the symbol NUG, and you can buy it down here in the States, as I have, under the symbol NULGF. There are 273 million shares outstanding, recently trading at around Canadian 50 cents. That would give it a market cap of around $136 million. Since this is James' first time with us, I should tell you that his background is in the area of finance and investments, but he has been around the mining industry for quite a few years, and he has very strong people skills that enable him to work very well with geoscientists on the one hand, and on the other hand, investment bankers and investors of all types. He brings with him some great communication skills, which is really wonderful because he's here to tell us today about NuLegacy Gold. Thanks for joining me today, James.
Thank you very much, Jay. Those are very kind words. I appreciate that.
Well, it's certainly words that are honestly spoken. I've known you for a number of years, and I'm really pleased that you could join me today. You seem to have a very good shareholder base, James, at NuLegacy. I'm very impressed by the shareholders. The institutions, the management, and the insiders own a lot. You have some investment houses that own a lot, and you have some mining companies that own a lot. Can you describe for our listeners who some of those major investors are, and why might they be interested in particular, I'm interested in knowing why some of the major mining companies might be so interested in owning a good chunk of your company.
Yeah, okay. These are all really good points. We have an excellent group of shareholders, very supportive shareholders that have supported us, especially through the downturn in the gold mining and gold mining shares depression that we've had for the last few years. Let's just start with our largest shareholder, OceanaGold, and I'll go through the list and give you a little brief synopsis of why we feel that they've been attracted to this company and why they've been attracted to the deposit that we've got, which is the reason why everyone's interested. So Oceana, they're a medium-sized Australian company, probably a $3 billion market cap. They had and continue to have a stated goal of expanding their operations into the Americas. And when we were able to identify that, we showed them this project. And after a little bit of negotiation, they decided to invest $6.7 million into our company. So they are now our largest shareholder with about 17.5%. And then there's Barrick Gold. Barrick is the largest gold mining company in the world. And we have a lot of points in common with Barrick. First of all, their shareholding, they own 11.8% of us. They got those shares when we did a share swap with them. We purchased their 30% residual interest in our deposit. They got a very large block of our shares. They saw the wisdom in that. They still have a very, very keen interest in what we're doing, and that's best illustrated by the fact that their head of global exploration and corporate development has joined our board, Rob Kretschmerhoff. So he's become a board member, and at least on kind of a quasi-consultative way, he's quite involved with how we're moving the project forward. So that's the two big mining companies that are involved. Tocqueville Gold Fund, one of the large New York gold investment houses, they own 7.2%. They bought that in a market transaction. Waterton is a multi-billion-dollar fund out of Toronto. They gave us money during the downturn when there really was very, very little money around to move these exploration projects forward. So happy to have them on board. Recently, Ingalls and Schneider, again a New York fund, a little bit more of generalists. They own our stock as well. So very supportive of what we're doing, and great shareholders to have on board.
Well, you have those great shareholders, and they're certainly not oblivious to the location where your iceberg property is. It is located on the sort of the southeastern Cortez Trend. But can you tell our listeners a little bit why the Cortez Trend is so important, and why, from the potential of a prospective deposit, why Barrick and Oceana and others are interested in your story?
Right. So the Cortez Trend in Nevada, it's really part of a subset of the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend, and it runs for about 25 miles in length, in strike length. There are three giant deposits in this trend. They're all owned by Barrick. Two of them are in production. One is called Pipeline, one is called Cortez Hills, and the one that's the most recent large discovery is called Gold Rush, all owned by Barrick. Just a few key points for your listeners about these deposits. They are 21, 15, and 10 million ounces respectively. There's hardly a place on the planet that you can find 3 deposits of that size in such close proximity. So for the little company, as you know, Jay, all of the little companies, all of the junior companies, they want to be beside, close to, in proximity with giant deposits. Where do you find a giant deposit? Well, 9 times out of 10, you find it close to other giant deposits. So we like the idea of exploring nearer these very, very large deposits. From a real meat and potatoes kind of way, though, Barrick produces 1 million ounces of gold per year from Pipeline and Cortez Hills in this area. And you put that in perspective for a moment. That's 20% of the production of the largest gold mining company in the world comes from the immediate area where we're working. I would just like to make the other point, too. Roger Steiniger, who's our head geologist, our head of geology, he is credited with that discovery with Pipeline some years ago. Mm-hmm. So Roger knows the rocks in this area as well as anybody.
Well, that's for sure. And it's my understanding as well that the Pipeline and possibly also the Cortez Hills, but at least the Pipeline is one of the lowest cost mines that Barrick has as well.
That's correct. Now, on a line item basis, Barrick doesn't break out Pipeline and Cortez Hills. They simply call it the Cortez operation in their quarterly and year-end statements. But last year, they produced that 1 million ounces for $603 all-in sustaining costs. So it's one of their most profitable operations anywhere on the planet.
And I notice also that as we go down the trend closer to the iceberg deposit where you're working, Barrick's Gold Rush has got a high grade. I think it's the highest grade of 10 million ounces, but if I'm looking at something correctly, it's 10.2 grams per ton.
No, that is correct. So Gold Rush, again, just to bring your listeners up to speed, Gold Rush, mineralization in that area had been known for a number of years, but it wasn't until 2010 that Barrick drilled a few holes, spectacular drill holes, and really figured out controls of mineralization and how the ore body looked like it was put together. So they then threw a lot of capital and a lot of people capital at that deposit. At one point, they had 21 drill rigs turning on it, and made a very, very large deposit out of it. Now, last year, Barrick had the quoted numbers from that deposit at about 15 million ounces of gold at 4.7 grams. Now, what they've done is they've taken a really high-grade envelope of that, and they now report 10 million ounces at over 10 grams. Now, the reason for that, it is a spectacular deposit, but it does have a couple challenges. It's quite deep, and it's all refractory ore. And what that means is instead of just being able to put that material onto a leach pad, what they're going to have to do is truck that ore probably about 80 miles to the north where their Gold Strike roaster is. So in order to do that, you're going to need a high-grade, some high-grade material to be able to do that with, and that's what they've done there. But spectacular numbers, 10 million ounces at 10 grams. The Barrick team that discovered that won the Thayer Lindsley Award in 2013 for global mineral discovery. That was at the Prospector and Developers Association convention in Toronto. So it is a truly award-winning deposit.
Well, who knows? You're next door, and maybe Roger Steiniger will be so fortunate, and the shareholders of NuLegacy, to have another award given for a deposit discovery next door. But you have a lot of work to do, of course, before we can know for sure whether that's going to take place. You have you drilled quite a bit already, but it is a mammoth property. James, as I look at it, it's just absolutely huge. And recently you come out with some drill results that seem to drive the market pretty well on the Avocado deposit, which is one of two. You have the Iceberg deposit, which is part of the Iceberg property. Talk to us a little bit about the significance of those two deposits. You really haven't done enough drilling yet to come up with a 43-101, that is the regulatory requirements for starting to name or give a number of ounces in the ground. But talk to us a little bit about the potential. I mean, I'm just looking at the size of this. I look at this Avocado, and I see a discussion at the eastern part of the Avocado. The latest drill hole you drilled was to the east, and the mineralization looks to line up more with perhaps an extension of the Iceberg, which is well over 2 kilometers to the south. I mean, if you can connect the dots here, it seems to me, James, you've got something very substantial potentially.
I think that's right. So that's a lot of information. Let me just back up a little bit and talk about the size of the property itself. So it's 38 square miles. Mm-hmm. It's the largest claim block that any company has in the Cortez Trend outside of Barrick. So then that's a really substantial thing. Through our initial earn-in from Barrick on this property, and then our purchase of their residual 30%, we managed to get 100% of this. And really, it was only the downturn in the gold price and the downturn in gold equities that allowed us to do that. And I liken it to having a corner lot on Park Avenue in New York. It's just impossible to replicate. The trend that we're in may well be the best place on the planet to find a gold mine. And we've got 38 square miles to explore for one. So that's thing one. Thing two, again, during the downturn, it was very difficult to raise money, so we wanted to be prudent and be drilling drill holes in our iceberg deposit, expanding our iceberg deposit, and coming up with, as you know, Jay, some excellent results here over the last few years. The Avocado discovery that's really just been announced over the last 2 or 3 weeks, now that we've got a little bit more money in our jeans, we don't mind stepping out to some of the peripheral areas on this property and taking a shot on some of the other targets. Well, one of these other targets is called Avocado. And the reason that it's called Avocado is because the induced polarization IP geophysical survey that we did out in that area, in plan, the signal looks like a sliced avocado. So the name stuck. We drilled a couple holes into this year with really spectacular, we feel, results. Now, the first hole, Avocado number 2, it's a 200-meter, so it's a 655-foot interval of gold mineralization. Mm-hmm. Now, it's only a quarter gram at that, over that broad interval. So some people will look at it and go, well, that's kind of low grade. And granted, it is. But the fact that we've gone out and with only our second drill hole in this area, gotten a 200-meter, a 655-foot interval of gold, that's really spectacular. It's in an area, as you say, if you look at the size of the anomaly itself, being a couple kilometers, so call it 1.5 miles long and maybe 3/4 of a mile wide, it's an enormous area for us to explore in. Where that's going to lead us, we don't know, but that's quite exciting. And then our next drill hole that we drilled into that also came up with a very good gold interval, 25 meters of a gram. So we're very excited about the possibilities. We've just scratched the surface out there. Very excited about the possibilities of what we can find in that area.
What is the strategy, James, in terms of establishing a 43-101 resource? Most companies like to do that early on. It's a way to promote their story and get people interested in it, but this thing is so large. What is the strategy? Well,
so far we just haven't really seen the need or the desire to do that. Certainly our shareholders, our major shareholders, whether it's Oceana, Barrick, or some of the large funds, in an afternoon they can create a 43-101 compliant resource themselves. And it's not rocket science. You can, your listeners can take 3 dimensions and multiply them and come up with a number that we might be able to look at. The other thing is right now, because we're drilling so aggressively, if we come up with a resource, then, within a very brief period of time, that resource will probably be obsolete. So for the time being, we're simply going to drill, continue to find more gold. Your listeners can look at a number of different cross-sections and see a bunch of the drilling on our website, which we invite them to do. For the time being, this is a very fast-moving, exploration, discovery-driven story, and I think that's working well for us right now.
But how are your financial resources at this stage? Are you well-funded to continue the exploration?
We are. Currently, we've got about 13 million Canadian dollars. So call that $10 million US dollars in the treasury. Pro forma will have about $7.5 million US dollars leaving 2016. So we're quite well funded going forward, and we continue to drill. There will be more drilling results every 3 weeks or so till mid-November, and there'll be lots more news between here and that time.
Well, I can say this last drill hole certainly did seem to move the needle in terms of your share price, and I would suggest that more of those kind of results, especially if you start to connect the dots between these wide-spaced drill holes, And especially if you were to come up with some high grades. And James, I think very frequently these Carlin-type deposits do have some very high-grade stuff, very high-grade intersections to be found as well. I guess that may be something that could really move the needle as well, huh?
I completely agree. First of all, I think what's really interesting about this story, the stock market really liked the fact that we had an important gold interval at Avocado. Not high grade, but the stock market recognized the fact that this could be very, very important. In terms of higher grade material, you'll remember, Jay, last year we drilled one hole at Iceberg proper where we got 41 meters of almost 4 grams of gold.
Yeah.
And that's a spectacular drill hole in just about any deposit. A hole like that at Avocado, I think, would change materially the way that people think about it. The other thing that I want to point out, too, for your listeners, the drill hole and the interval that we got, especially in Avocado number 2, it's at the same stratigraphic horizon, so it's in the same rock types and at the same depth as the Gold Rush deposit, as Barricks Gold Rush deposit, just across the valley from us. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's pointing a lot of people to the importance of this interval and what it could be. One more point, too, regarding the higher grades. One thing that I've really learned about Carlin systems over the last number of years, grade can change so quickly. So when you step out even a couple of 100 feet from one drill hole to the next, your grade can change materially. So the fact that this one big interval that I've been talking about is lower grade, but the fact that it's 655 feet worth of gold mineralization, that's the important part. That's the thing that people are excited about.
Right. It's a huge mineralized system, no doubt about that. And I think as you start to connect the dots between the widely spaced drill holes so far, that the market's going to really like what they see. Anything else in summing up, James, that you'd like to say? I guess one other thing about Avocado. Now that we've got a lot of people's excitement, everybody wants us to walk out there and drill some holes really, really quickly. It's likely that we will take, at least a number of weeks and maybe a couple of months to look at all of the geology here before we go back out and drill some holes out there. So, I just want people to be aware that we will take a little bit of time. That having been said, we are now on approximately our 95th drill hole on this property. We drilled 35 holes onto this property last year when no one else in the junior mining industry was drilling anything. So we're not shy about drilling holes out here, but we're going to do it intelligently and methodically and make sure that we come up with as good an exploration plan as possible. All right. Well, we'll have to leave it go at that. We're out of time, but thank you, James, very much.